Well, welcome to the Friday Bubble. Today we have a great new release that's just out this week. Bollinger, the PN series. This one's a VZ19, and I'm going to taste it against the previous edition, which was the AYC18. Now, the reason for having a little look at these is they're actually really quite similar wines. So the core of them, it's obviously a non-vintage champagne. So there's a dominant year, 2019 for the Verzenay, 2018 for the I. I is obviously the home village of Champagne Bollinger, and we had to wait to the fourth creation before they went to their home village. Now, I thought this would be a fascinating comparison because the two villages, Verzenay and I, are very, very different climatically. So I'm hoping that we'll look quickly at the theory and see whether the taste actually matches up. In Verzenay, you've got this very northerly aspect, and I think that's important because it's also quite cool by the winds. All of those who've seen pictures of the windmill atop the hill there, that's the Moulin de Verzenay, currently owned by Mum Champagne. But it sits beautifully on top of the hill. Now there's a reason for telling this story. There's a reason that windmills are on the top of the hill as well. So going back 2 or 3 centuries, this was a big area for milling of corn. So the hillsides around that area were full of windmills. This is the only one that exists to this day. So Verzenay also has a good airflow, it's fair to say, northerly aspect. So it's much more cooling in these progressively warmer years that we're getting from climate warming. 2018 with the I edition, I is very different. It's south facing, so it's exposed to the sun all day long. The fascinating thing about a non-vintage is there's always a dominant year. So with the Verzenay 19, that's 52% of it is from 19. The I18 is 47% from 2018. So quite similar numbers actually. Now, of course, the dominant village, the Verzenay is 40% from Verzenay and the I is 47%. Now, they're obviously the dominant year makes up a big chunk, and then there's the couple of previous years for both of them that are the reserve wine parcel. So 53% reserves in the I, and I think it's 48 in the Verzenay. So again, quite similar statistics. So the first couple of vintages previous will be the reserve wines, plus the addition of some reserve wine from magnums. Now that's really quite key. The magnums are from 2009, and it's really only the reserve program at Bollinger where they invest the time and the money in putting wine into these reserves. A reserve wine is a still wine, and it's kept usually in big stainless steel tanks, and to keep them obviously free from oxygen. Here at Bollinger, they believe in putting quite a large percentage into magnums and bottling them with a small amount of yeast and sugar. So they're just at about 2 to 2.5 bars of pressure. So just what we might call gently sparkling to help preserve them on their journey. So they pick up incredible character. 2009 has obviously been in the bottle for quite some years, and they'll have this most beautiful texture to them. And that's 25% of both of the wines. So really one of the key things is really down to the villages, the aspect. Obviously north facing, perhaps a bit more wind and airflow, south facing, much hotter. And I'm just going to get on and taste them actually, because this is really why we're here. 19 as a vintage and 18 as a vintage. 18 was a much larger yielding year, quite joyful. It obviously followed 17, which was far from joyful. And a lot of the houses were able to replace their reserve wines from 17 with the abundance of crop from 18. So a nice, large, yielding vintage. Everyone was very thankful for 2018 when it came along. Nice and hot, so there was very little disease pressure during the year, and there's lots of great champagne from 18. 19, not massively dissimilar. Perhaps one of the biggest differences, it started a little bit earlier, but then they had some cooler nights during the summer. And if you look at the statistics of the two, then there's much higher acidity in the wines from 2019. So we would expect there to be some subtle differences here between 19 and 18. They both have joyful fruit. They must have joyful fruit because they're solar years. So let's have a little look. First, the Verzenay. There's some really lovely. In fact, there's almost so much fruit in here. It nearly overwhelmed me. It's full of really ripe peaches, and other fruits like apricots. And then loads of apricots and dark cherry. Now, the interesting thing, I'm actually picking up some tropical, like lychees in this. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. The one thing that's really similar, obviously, is the fermentations. Half of it is stainless steel, half of it is in barrel. So I think that's a really beautiful combination because you're getting massive fruit expression and just a backbone of some spice and other of the textural benefits from the oak. Now let's see on the nose the 18 from I. Now quite different. It has a year longer post disgorgement. Both the 19 was disgorged in January 24 and the 18 January 23. So literally a year apart. I think you can see a slightly darker colour on the 18. I'm perhaps getting more stone fruit here, so perhaps dark stone fruit and, like plums here. Dark cherries, lots of that orange character. Very, very different. And I guess you're starting to get some of that secondary bottle characteristics with really rather attractive. The 19 is very perfumed, surprisingly different actually, the two aromatics. There's lots of really, I can't get past the lychee on that. And and let's have a little taste. So let's do the 19 first. Wow, I think you can pick up, for me, I think you can really pick up these old reserve magnums. And I'm going to describe that because of the texture. The texture you get, it's almost that little bit of oiliness, but really quite velvety, soft and gentle. And it finishes really light, bright, really quite, my mouth's watering, really quite saline on the end. That's really delicious. I opened these an hour ago, mainly because I wanted the aromatics to come forward, but they really have. They've exploded forward. I love that 19 balance. Now let's have a look. There should be a bit more development here, so we should have a bit more dried fruit. And actually, I am almost picking up a little hint of that beautiful aromatic again that I had here, the sort of almost lychee, some of this honeysuckle and white flower characteristic. Yes, more dark cherry, much more dried fruit coming through here. I'm picking up that beautiful lemoniness, but dried lemon and dried lime. And there's some quite tropical, characteristics in these, nearly going towards those yellow fruits, which isn't Pinot Noir. And I don't think I've said these are 100% Pinot Noir, so Blanc de Noir. They're fascinating, the differences. More perfumed, I think more delicate, the 2019. Wow, this is quite tough to know which one I prefer. I've got some help in hand here. Essie couldn't be with me today, but I have got her note on the VZ19, the new baby, and she goes, on the ripe but fresh and a harmonious harvest of 2019, Bollinger chose Verzenay as a pillar. A warm year, but the northern facing terroirs, 40% of the blend from Verzenay, including a hefty 25% of reserve wines from 2009. The aromatics come across sweetly, expressive with many aromatic assets. Definitely agree with that. The dominant fruit is ripe yellow peach, with which the 50% oak fermented wine complements with spicy mineral nuances, yet very few oxidative tones. We like that. If the nose promises ripeness, the palate counterbalances by its lovely linear and saline scintillating nervosity. I think that's what I was trying to describe. Essie's rather done it better than I was doing it. The warmth of the ear can be sensed, the textured fleshiness and juicy fruity power. At the same time, the wine projects immaculate precision and length. Ooh, lovely tasting note, Essie. Thank you. So Essie has given that 94 with a potential for 95, which is actually a point higher than the 18. So if Essie was here, I know she would be wanting to take to lunch, as we always do afterwards, the 2019. And I think I agree with her. And I think that just reflects the vintage characteristics. 2019, lovely, rich, ripe characteristics, but there is a bit more tension in them. There is higher acidity, technically, if you look at the numbers, and I think that really shows. Beautiful aromatics. I'm a bit seduced by the 2019, and very light touch of oak. 2018 is very different. You are definitely now, after a few minutes more in the glass, getting more of those dried fruit characteristics coming forward. I dare say I'd love to drink the 19 by itself. 18, I'm going to have with food. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm sorry it's only me here today. Essie will be back next week with another edition of the Friday Bubble. And I hope you will get a chance to try one of these sometime very soon. And I'm going to try and put on a tasting of all 5 in the series. Started with the 15, so 3 of them are from Verzenay, 1 from and 1 from Tauxières. So we'll try and organise that for some bottles and some magnums sometime very soon. Happy Friday, everybody.